So, hello everybody, and welcome to this little session. Thank you for making the time to log in. I am truly humbled by the number of people who have made the time to come in today, and you're still joining now. I think we're up to about 70 participants currently, and I think there are probably another 40 or 50 that may be joining us. But I'm keen to get cracking, and I hope you're having a decent day. I'm confident that this session will be useful for you. I'm aiming for it to be around 25 to 30 minutes, but with the way numbers are going, it may be a tad longer. I'd like you to think about this session and learn to become more of your own coach. This is a session that I'm going to pose some questions. I'm going to think about some ideas about some things, and give you some food for thought, hopefully, that you can go away and work for on yourself and with your teams. So today you've seen the agenda for the day, and we'll be looking at some of the critical emotional intelligence actions you can take to help yourselves and your teams. Moreover than that, what I would like you to do today is to use this time to pause. And I'd imagine that maybe over the last 4, 6, 8 weeks or time, you may not have had too much time to pause, and there's been a lot of action. But I think the action of pausing, slowing down, thinking, reflecting is something that can be very useful for us. And I do want us to reflect, spend some time to think about how you and your teams have coped with the last 6 to 8 weeks, and think about how you might manage the coming period of time. I'm also keen, and part of my coaching is I like my clients to use more curiosity, and I'd like you to be more curious about the way in which you think, the way in which you feel, and I also like you to be more curious about the responses from the people around you. And find that we are not too quick to come to judgment. So those are some of the kind of key things for today. First of all, what I'd like us to do, I've got a few questions for us, and I'd like you to take part in this. So I've got 2 questions which have come up on the screen here. What I'd like you to do is just kind of respond to those 2 questions for me, and then we'll get cracking. So we'll take about a minute or so to do that. That'd be fantastic. Thank you very much. So we're getting there. We've got about another 6 or 7 people to kind of respond. Okay, just got a few more. Okay, just going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then I'll end the poll, and we'll be able to move on. Okay, so I'll end the poll here now. And I'll share the results with you all here. So the first question there is, to what extent has your existing toolbox prepared you for the challenges of the past few months? And unsurprisingly, that most of us feel that we've got something going on, but we've also got a few gaps. And I guess that's the reason why we would come and spend some time on a little webinar like this to see maybe we can find some things to help us with what we're up to. And on a scale of 0 to 5 is how comfortable are you with questioning your leadership style and its effectiveness? And I think kind of one of the fundamental things about when we're in crisis or any time is if we're not prepared to question ourselves and look to be better, we're doomed to make some mistakes with some things. So actually being able to ask questions of ourselves and ask the difficult questions are the key things that help us to grow and learn from events like this. So, so thank you for sharing that with me. So, whilst I'm asking you to be more curious, the chances are that your people have already moved to judgment about you. So judgments about, can they trust us with our future? And of course, our actions and behaviours are constantly confirming what people think of us. Now, some of us may well say, well, that's not important. But actually, if we want our people to come with us on the next stage of this journey, whatever that looks like, the chances are we're going to need them to come with us. We're going to need them to actually trust us, to help us with that. And there's a sense for me that this crisis is forcing all leaders to explore their potential. And some of us will find our limits, and some of us will find our limits early, and some of us will find our limits a bit later on. And it's an interesting time for all of us to understand exactly how we are behaving in a time when most of us are going through experiences which maybe we've never been through before. And understanding some of our potential is a key to this. I'd just like us to do a little bit of an exercise here. Now, of course, I can't see you, so it's your call. And you may have done this previously as well. But what I'd like you to do is I'd just like you to reach your arm as high up in the air as you possibly can. Okay, there you go. Just as high as you possibly can. Brilliant. And now what I'd like you to do is just to raise it just a little bit further. Just a little bit further. Now, I can't see what you're doing, but no doubt, all of you will have found just that little bit more in yourselves. And the interesting thing about this is that actually we think we find our limits, but actually there's always a little bit more for all of us. And the key thing for us about how we act is no matter what our people think of us, we are rarely going to disappoint them, whether that be good or bad. So it's worth us thinking about that, because actually, if you think about your businesses now, how are we going to make sure that we bring our people with us? What is it we need to do to make that happen? So I'd like to think about how have you reacted so far? How have you reacted to this? Have you panicked, or have you been kind of calm, cool and collected? I like to think about the stories of successful surfers. So if a surfer is obsessing about the last 6 waves or the next 6 waves, they're liable to be wiped out and overwhelmed by it all. And most of us live in the illusion that being overwhelmed comes from overwhelming circumstances. But let's just think about that for a minute. Actually, it's about overwhelming thoughts rather than circumstances. Because if you think about the notion that everything in this world that ever happens is neutral, it's us that provide the meaning for it. So no matter where you come from, whatever you're thinking about, it's the meaning you create for it that can either make you calm or make you overwhelmed for it. And thinking about that improves the extent to which we pay attention to the here and now. And we can actually be educated by our experience. So thinking about the meaning you've given to what's happened in the last 6 to 8 weeks, and the meaning you've given to what might happen in the next 6 to 8 weeks, next 12 weeks, next 3 months and beyond. And thinking about how you behave within that and what it means. But of course, the key for us is that when the way in which we behave is all based upon the stuff that's below the line here, our principles, our values and our purpose. And at times like this, we can really genuinely see the importance of our values and have an absolute clarity about all of those things. Clarity about what our principles are, what our key personal values are, and what our purpose is, and how that transmits to our daily activity. One of the things that I like to do with the teams I work with is to create a playbook. And so those of you that are here with me now, who've been before, having a playbook for how we're going to approach the next 6 to 8 weeks, 12 weeks and beyond is absolutely fundamental to provide ourselves, our teams and our people with clarity. And there are 6 key questions around our purpose, key questions about our behaviours, key questions about what we're going to do, how we will succeed through this next phase, what's important right now, and actually what must we do first. Fundamental questions. And once we're able to have that kind of clarity, we're able then to communicate that with our people more effectively. And actually, I do believe we've got an opportunity now to genuinely craft a brave new future. The chances of us going back to what life was like before are minimal. And actually, the question we might pose to ourselves is, how much of what we had before do we want? How much was it important for us? But actually understanding and creating a playbook for ourselves will help us towards some of those things. And, you know, many of us are in the business that we love, you know, and we often accept managing and leading people as coming with the territory of doing the jobs and roles that we do. And I've met many leaders who actually love the business, but managing and leading people is not their favourite thing to do. And the question for us is about where is our focus and where is our attention. So each one of us will have a natural hierarchy around whether we prefer to work with the task or whether we prefer to work with people. Now, we all know as educated individuals we need both. But in our thinking, one comes before the other. I guess the key piece around that is, how does that inform our decisions and how we then go around behaving? And can paying attention to one support us with the other? Interesting question for us. So, can paying attention to maybe people help us with our task? Well, I actually believe that it is possible. It is possible. And often when I work with performance organisations, and I've worked with lots of sports coaches, I talk about, are you a performance coach or are you a relationship coach? And we think about that. If we want to sustain high performance, sustaining high performance is fundamentally relational. So in a world where none of us can have all the answers, we're moving to a time where actually we might make some good guesses about things, but none of us will know the exact right answer. Developing relationships which promote open and honest discussion have to become more important than they ever have been before. And I often think about collaboration. So many of the organisations I work with talk about collaborations, and I know there are numbers of you here today that are members for the Institute for Collaboration itself. And we think about what's ahead of us now. I believe now we've absolutely come to a time where it may have been a nice to do for some organisations in the past, but actually my sense of belief now is it's an absolute must. We must work to be able to collaborate more effectively with each other and with our organisations. What that demands of us, it demands of us to be able to build trust and confidence in each other. And we think about that, what does that demand of us as individuals? How does that change our behaviours from before? You know, we think about kind of supplier relationships, we think about our relationships with our teams, the degree of trust we have, and how that helps us to create some sustainable high performance. So I'm thinking about us building what I call an ALE account. These are what I call the key drivers of trust. So 3 key things, and some of these you'll have heard of before. So the first and most important one is about authenticity. So when you're speaking, do people believe you? What is it about what you say and how you say it that's believable? The second piece is about logic. So do people actually have faith in your judgment and competence? And the third piece is empathy. How much do people feel that you care about them? Now, these aren't things we can all conjure up in 5 minutes. These are all things that are built up over time. And what style of leadership will you adopt? So this is a model from Daniel Goleman, the 6 styles of leadership. And post this program, I'll send out a crib sheet around these 6 styles. But if we think about it, crisis requires direction, it requires instructions. And actually, there are many of us that may be comfortable with that kind of approach because it's all about the task, it's about getting things done. The danger, obviously, is it can smother employees' sense of initiative and their sense of self-determination. And we can only work in this environment for so long. So if your performance is only based on short-termism, then actually you may use this as your default style. So the styles which are the pace setting and the commanding piece. But actually, if we also want to kind of bring our people with us, we need to think about how we provide an appropriate and sensitive leadership style. Because those are the things that help people to feel that they're actually part of something. Each one of us will have a default style here. Some of you may have done some work around some of this yourself in the past. So thinking about what your default style is. So if your default style is to be a pace setter, that's great if we want to kind of set the vision and we want to kind of set things going. But actually, over a long period of time, potentially that can tire people out. So think about kind of what's important to us. One of the things that I often speak to leaders about is this concept of empathy fatigue. And many leaders that I speak to currently feel a great deal of responsibility to their people. And I don't know about you, but some of the people I've spoken to have felt pretty lonely, feeling that they need to help others. They've got responsibilities, there's decisions to be made, some tough decisions to be made. But actually being transparent about it and to be transparent about how we feel is a tough call, especially in times like this. A call for vulnerability and transparency. You know, I think about myself actually. So, you know, when times are pretty tough, as a coach, there's an expectation that I set for myself that I can help myself out quite a lot of the time, and I can make sure I've got all the right behaviours. But like everybody, there are times when I feel pretty low, pretty lonely, and it's a tough place to be. And if you think about it, I don't know how often you've been speaking to your people, but I imagine quite a bit. You think about the stories that you've heard from individuals, the things that are going on for them outside of their work, and you're taking that stuff in all the time. There comes a time where we have to look after ourselves and actually be able to have some self-care, because actually there are times where we maybe get overloaded and try and deal with other people's stuff. So looking after ourselves is important, and actually knowing that we're human is important. So here's some tips and tools that I think might be helpful and useful. So the first one is to respond rather than to react. That sounds pretty obvious, really, doesn't it? But actually, when we're in the moment, it's very easy for us to react to what's happening. So I think it's important for us to have a plan about how we're going to respond, how we're going to behave, not only for the business operations, but also for our people interactions and ourselves. And when we're communicating, think about what our intention is. So when we're speaking to individuals, what's the intention of the communication? And actually, if other people speak to you and it doesn't land very well with you, there's a sense for me that I'm more inclined to ask what an individual's intention was before I react to what they're saying. Because when we're in high pressure situations, it's very easy to actually to react, especially if we've got previous history with the individuals. So I think responding rather than reacting is a key piece for us. I think the second one is about beating communication barriers. So knowing what our team's communication strengths and blind spots are. So if you think about the teams that you work with and the way in which other people communicate, what works with you, what doesn't work. Assess people's understandings of their roles during this time, and clarify any ambiguity as soon as possible. Think about learning from experience. So, there will have been times in the past where we'll have been through tough situations. It may not be exactly the same with this, but what approaches worked, what didn't? And whilst there's no situation may be entirely the same, they may give you a broader picture of how you might be able to keep the business moving forward. I think there's also a thing about intentionally building relationships with people and to be interested in other people. I'm making the assumption that as you've logged on today, that this is something that you're already doing. You're doing some of it, you're doing a lot of it, but I can't underestimate the importance of intentionally building relationships with the people around you and assure people of their value to you. Because often you think about what you've been through in the last 8 to 10 weeks, you might have been looking to shore up your business and your mind may have been on the tasks at hand. And every conversation with any individual may be task focused. It was interesting recently, one of my clients, he actually took the time out to give me a call and we just had a chat. In the past, he would never have done that. And actually I felt quite valued by the fact he'd actually taken 45 minutes out of his time just to have a conversation with me. And I think it's important that we remember that we've got human beings and they're not human doings. And recognizing that actually the more we treat everybody as an individual, the more we're able to bring them with us on whatever journey that looks like. And bearing in mind that we're not going to have all the answers to everything, and the answers may live elsewhere. And by the way, I think there's another thing here about the problems that we face. The answers will lie within us or they'll lie around us. If you think about that, that gives us some power and some strength. I guess the fundamental piece around that is what are the right questions to ask and what environment do we create in order to allow people to answer them without fear of retribution, without being ridiculed or shouted down. I also think there's a thing for us about the ability to show vulnerability. So it's okay to say we don't know. I think it's okay to ask for help. And I think by involving other people, I think it also is a sign that we are a secure leader. The importance of maintaining flexibility during this time can't be underestimated. I would imagine that you may well have even had made a plan 1 week and then within 3 or 4 days that's had to be ripped up. And I foresee that for quite some time. But it's important that we keep on making decisions, but we're flexible about it. And we can't be wedded to any one particular idea. Your teams are going to react to your body language and your tone of voice. And of course, a lot of your communications are likely to be over mediums like this. And if they can't see you, your tonality becomes even more important. So I think your teams are going to appreciate your frankness, but will rely on you for direction so they can perform well. And I think the final piece here, and it's something that many of us find difficult to do because we're running some long hours, is to take care of yourself. So what are you doing to look after yourself both physically and mentally? Because I was talking to another client of mine last week, and he told me that he'd spent from 8 a.m. to about 6 p.m. 4 days that week on Zoom calls. You can only do that for so long. You can only do that for so long. And taking care of your own well-being is key. So ensuring that you can come out in the best shape possible is absolutely fundamental. So what are you doing? Looking after yourself, taking breaks, physical stuff. It all sounds so fundamental and so easy, but you know that many of us don't do it because we feel like we've got to keep going on because we've got to do stuff for our business. Often there's an adage about less is more. So those are my kind of key 8 things for us to consider. If you want to think about how you can build your leadership capability in times of change, we will send you some information around some of those things. I really hope you found today useful and worthwhile, and that you found at least one nugget of information or something you can work on for yourself. The more and more we feel we're open to things, we're open to questioning ourselves and to learning more, the better we're going to be and the stronger we're going to be coming out of this. And the leaders who actually spend time working on themselves are the ones that are going to create better and the stronger organisations. So I'd like to thank you all for your time and your energy. Clearly we'll be asking you for some feedback about today, and good luck and take care. All the best. Cheerio.